And sorry, warm ups. You all see all the, you're all seeing. Okay, I'm going to start at, since she's not right here, I'm going to start at maybe 13. These size 2 clothes don't come. 2 of those too lazy, too wet. I want you better. Okay, so let's do that. Measure 13.
The original concept was, came through Community Ed, Richard Negrinelli, to have a evening class through Community Ed that would teach theater arts, and at the end of that class there'd be a production.
I started with Clio Cast and Crew during the 1990-91 season, was my first actual production.
At Clio Cast and Crew, I became a member and started the fall right after I retired from teaching in Clio for a million years.
See, when did I start with Clio Cast and Crew? I think it was around 1989 with Music Man. And that was my favorite show of all time. You know, when you start your first show, and we kind of got roped into it, and we enjoyed it. It was great. Had a great time.
And the signs were up calling people that might be interested in theater to come to a meeting. I'm going to guess sometime in October, maybe, probably October of '76. I get confused.
I think it was around 1989 when we were doing Fiddler on the Roof, and my kids had always wanted to be involved with theater, and the year before they had tried out for Annie or one of the shows, and they didn't make it, and they were really disappointed. And so I knew that a lot of times that parents that were involved, the kids became more involved and were more apt to be, you know, in a show with them. And so we decided that my husband would audition for Fiddler on the Roof, and he got the part of the rabbi, and so we sort of became involved with it that way.
I started with Sound of Music way back when. I don't know what show it was, probably 7th or 8th one that they've done, and my daughter auditioned for Sound of Music, and she got in. And when I called to order tickets, Maggie Harmon snagged me and asked if I could work the box office. And I've been working on shows ever since. Almost every show, in some capacity.
Well, Cast and Crew actually started in 1977 in the fall, and our first show was '78. I had just had Laura in August of '78, so I didn't really get involved until a couple years later, and that was in the hallway in the high school selling tickets. That's how that started.
So we came together for a meeting. Evie Zielinski was directing. The show was Wind in the Willows. And she cast the show with those that showed up. And we did the first show. Went up on stage in February of '78. We made a profit of roughly $400. So Mr. Negrinelli gave us permission to do another show. So I wasn't part of just picking that show. I assume Evie did. Sir Slob and the Princess. And we put that on stage probably May, maybe end of April, something like that. And again, we had a small profit, which we were very proud of, by the way, that we had a profit at all.
I got started with Clio Cast and Crew in the early 90s. Believe it or not, at the time I was a dancer, and I came out to audition for MAME. My dance studio director was choreographing the show, and she wanted all us guys to come out because you always need guys in shows. I got a part, and I'm like, I kind of like this. And I went and talked to the director, and they said, well, we got a couple of openings still. You're here, try this, try that. I ended up being MAME's husband in the show, Beauregard Jackson Pickett Burnside. Yep, that's how it got started, many years ago.
I came to Theater 57 in Clio Cast and Crew back in 2005. I came out here, I'd heard of Clio Cast and Crew, and I had seen a couple of their shows at Amphitheater, but I had no idea how to get out here or anything. And I finally saw an audition notice for On Golden Pond in 2005, and I thought, I'm going to do it. So I got up my nerve and I came out here. I was scared to death to come in and audition a whole new group of people, a new theater, a new group. But when I came in, everyone was so warm and so welcoming that I felt at ease right away. And I was fortunate enough to be given a role on Golden Pond. That was a good beginning to become a member of the Clio Cast and Crew.
The beginnings of Cast and Crew, now 40 years ago, were a lot of fun. And the way I got involved, I was working as an aide to our state senator from Clio, Gary Corbin, and his daughter, Susan, was one of the original founders, because Susan was in high school, and the schools had some budget cutbacks, and they cut back on the drama department at school, and she wanted to participate. So she and the other founders went to the community ed director, Dick Negrinelli, and asked if a community could have a theater group. And actually, Dick Negrinelli said yes, he would sponsor that. So he allowed us then to use the auditorium in the high school. And the first show was Wind in the Willows, and I was in it. I played the Badger. I think I was a little bit rougher then, but... I
believe it was June. So it'd be June of 78? Something's not clicking right for me, but anyways. We held a meeting of all those that had been involved or were interested to form an official group. It was held at the library in the high school. And discussions were held. We needed a name. And we didn't want to go with players like Flint Community Players, Bay City Players. That just seemed so trite. Everybody had that. And also something that was very important, and I can't stress this enough because I think it's been so successful for us, was that we wanted to recognize the contributions not only of the people on stage, but the people backstage. It was not uncommon at that time in community theater for backstage people to be kind of forgotten, poo-pooed, and all the glory going to the people on stage. And we did not want that. So that's how we came up with Cast and Crew of Clio, was actually the original name.
I originally got into Clio Cast and Crew about 13 years ago. The first play was in 2006, Beatrix Potter, Tales of Beatrix Potter and Friends.
The show in the year I started was Sweet School the Musical during 2013.
I started at Clio Cast and Crew in 2008 when we did Clue the Musical. I came to audition and I got cast as the role of Miss Scarlet. And I had heard about it through word of mouth. I knew a couple of people who had done shows out at Clio Cast and Crew. And I came out because my high school, I went to Flushing, and my high school was not casting me in anything that I had been auditioning for. And so I decided that I might as well go to a different place and see if I can get casted there. And I've always loved the board game Clue, and Miss Scarlet was always, I knew that was the role that I wanted. And I probably wouldn't have done the show if I didn't get cast as that. So I I did it. I had an amazing time. I met Jeff Springay, Shelley Reed, Hugh Russo, and just a bunch of amazing people that I did that show with. I was the youngest in that show. I was 16, but I wasn't driving yet. So my mom was driving me to every rehearsal, and she was there every day. So finally, the director, Jeff Murdoch, he said, well, Cheryl, why don't you come and work backstage since you're going to be here every day? And she did. I really couldn't believe that she said she would do that, but it was cool. And that's how it all got started. And ever since then, I think my mom has worked backstage in almost every show. So she definitely got bit by the bug, and I've always had it. So that's how we got started.
Because we were under the auspices of community education, we had use of the high school. If we had had to rent it, we would not have survived. And we stayed under the community ed label for many, many years, which initially paid for custodian, but use of the building and the custodian. Eventually we ended up having to pay for the custodian, but so we were under the school district, so that really helped us get going.
Music Man. It was in the high school at the time, and the shows were always sold out, so there was like 500 people there every night. So it was, and I got to be a pick a little lady, so it was fun. We had a great time, and the kids were involved, and that's kind of how we got started with the kids.
The shows were very good at the high school, especially the musicals. They always brought in a crowd like they do now, too. The problem with that was that we didn't have the use of the high school as much as we can do here. I mean, there was always, if there was something at the high school, we had to leave or couldn't have that night to work on it, or I remember several times that they had to tear the whole set down. One time between a show, we had to tear the whole set down and then put it all back up before our next week's show. So it was difficult, especially towards the end before we got this. It got worse as the years went on. They seemed to lose track of that we were scheduled in there and stuff like that.
I remember when Nate Yonker brought up the idea of an amphitheater in my living room, actually. It was the first time that those of us on the board of Cast and Crew heard about it. It was an idea at that time. And I have to credit Nate. He did all the politicking and fundraising and getting groups on board. I remember we had a little groundbreaking when they brought in the backhoe to start breaking down the hillside for the actual construction. And then I was involved in probably most of the amphitheater shows, yeah.
One of my favorite memories, Jeff can attest to this, when we did Mousetrap.
Oh, I was thinking of that just a minute ago.
The pranks that Danny Birch and Jim Reif used to do, they were backstage. They used to do a lot of the sets, and we had a sign that the manor, Monkswell Manor, and Mike Zinn, he was the owner of the manor, his part, and every night he had to bring this sign at the start of the show. And every night, it was hollow. It was hollow at the start of the show. And every night, these guys add a little sand to the inside. And so by the last show, you could actually, in his voice, you could tell he was laboring because he could hardly pick the thing up. It was so heavy.
Not the last, next to the last show. Because the last show, because Mike didn't know this, the last show, they emptied the sand out. So he's anticipating, 40 pounds of sand, and there's nothing. And he goes,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. When we did South Pacific, when we did Nothing Like a Dame, and they were off to
They didn't do that. No, they didn't do that. It was Scotty Gasbridge. And one of the light
Squirting.
No,
there's a group of us. No, I'm talking about they were over there. They were squirting us.
That one. Yeah, well, we did another prank. Go ahead.
No, that's what they were.
Yeah.
Danny and those guys had squirt guns, and they were squirting us as we came around and singing the song.
Well, in that same song, it was the last show, and of course I was stage manager, and I was the one that got in trouble for it. But two of the kids, Scott Gasbridge, who was very involved in our group back then, young teenager, and one of the boys from the light crew came down. And in South Pacific, there's a lot of reference to the moon. You know, the beautiful moon over Valley High and all these different things. So they decided to moon the sailors.
Right.
And it was after all of the nurses had paraded by, they were gone, and the sailors were ogling them and watching them as they go off. And so they saw the two boys mooning those sailors. And of course, Evie realized something happened right away. And she was in the audience, and she came running up to me and goes, "What happened? What happened? What's going on?" You know, like that. And everybody was laughing like crazy. It wasn't like it stopped the show or anything, but still. But oh my God, all the sailors told me that it was funny as heck. So yeah, we did a lot of stuff back there.
We did some mooning during the last Sound of Music we did too. Because the nuns, the younger nuns, wouldn't come up and move sets. So us older nuns kept getting stuck. And then the lights would come up and you're standing behind the set piece. But you could see all these nuns in the wings. So some of us nuns who were stuck on stage entertained them a little.
Well, I guess so.
The amphitheater shows were grueling. If you had skimpy costumes, it was always cold in July. And if you had costumes with a whole bunch of clothes or black, it was usually very hot. And the mosquitoes loved it. When we did Guys and Dolls, the mosquitoes loved our black costumes. So one day I sprayed bug repellent all over my black nylons, and they had all these different splotches. We started out with Wizard of Oz, and I was in that. I was one of the green people. Land of Oz, right? Yeah. Emerald City, yep. And I got to chase Mike Dickinson down the steps. He was the Cowardly Lion. And hit him with my umbrella and yell at him. So that was fun. By the last night, we got that down pretty good. But all of the shows really were great at the amphitheater. Grease was wonderful. West Side Story. There were a lot of really cool shows there. Everything was bigger. Like the sets had to be bigger proportion-wise. They were a lot more expensive because we had to hire a company come in with lights and sound, which was an added expense. And then as they kept adding seats, our royalties kept going up for that. But it was fun because most days it was nice out. By the time it cooled, if it was a hot day, it usually cooled down enough that it was just nice being out there. There were a lot of funny things. I know when we did, Oklahoma, Tom Fielder, they had a real horse, and he would ride the horse in, and singing Oklahoma. And every time the train went through in Clio, blowing its whistle. So that was one. They had the real pig. That was interesting, but just different things like that. Or the one time during Wizard of Oz, we had a real hot air balloon at the top of the hill. And one night it almost got away from them, so that was interesting. And, when I kept looking up there, I thought, oh, that balloon's not there. That balloon's not there yet. But they finally brought it over, but it almost took off on them, so that was kind of cool.
That year, my husband left, and they were doing Wizard of Oz in the amphitheater. my girls got cast as jitterbugs. I thought probably they'd get a munchkin, but they were the jitterbugs, and it was a fun part. And during that time, I went into the box office, and Maggie Harmon was working, and I helped her start there. And then they needed somebody to freshen the flowers every morning during the show. And the biggest thing of all, somebody said, well, I need someone to paint the yellow brick road. And I said, oh, I don't paint. And he said, well, you don't have to. You brick. He said, we'll give you a sponge. But I did it. I painted the yellow brick road, and I thought that was the most fun thing. And the girls and later my son and our whole family became involved with theater, and it was a really good move for us.
Well, one of the final rehearsals, I was carrying a tackle box, and it somehow dropped, or I don't know how it dropped. Anyway, all this tackle was all over the stage. We had to pick it up and get it back into the tackle box. And somehow I got a treble hook caught in I think it was my thumb. Oh. And of course it was makeup and costume night, and I had on all this heavy makeup. And I was wearing that house coat with the great big peacock on the back of it. Yep. And, of course, we couldn't get the hook out of my hand. So, fortunately, David was here at the rehearsal that night, and he took me over to ER, and I had to run and walk into the hospital in the ER in this makeup and this horrible... I had to look like a lady of the night. But yeah, they had to cut that hook out of my thumb.
And now look at Dave. He didn't learn anything. Look at you.
During Little Abner, I was walking down the hill for my exit. At that time, there were the 3 lower sections, not the 2 side sections, and the bottom part weren't as wide as they are now. And then there were 2 sections in the upper section of the amphitheater. The extended parts weren't even there yet. And so we ended the opening number. I was supposed to walk across the walkway and then walk down the hillside to backstage. And first weekend went great. Second week, we had a Thursday night show that we canceled because of rain. And I was exiting down the hillside on Friday night. I stepped on a rock. The rock slid. I fell down. I thought I had just twisted my ankle, so I tried to stand up and shake it off, walk it off, and I went down a second time. And Wade Lewis and Doug Vance, who were waiting behind the trees to set off fireworks later in the show, came running because they realized that my foot was kind of hanging and that I probably broke something, and came rushing over, had me put my arms around them and hop down on my good foot. Our spotlight operators were EMTs, so I think we had 3 EMTs in the crew and about 3 nurses in the cast, and so they all came over and checked it out. Somebody radioed up to Dee at the top of the hill saying, call an ambulance, we've got an injury, get us a bag of ice. So she called the ambulance, but she said, we're in production of a show, do not turn the siren on. And they came, took me to the hospital. I had a broken leg and a dislocated ankle. I had to have surgery the next day. I still to this day have a metal rod in my leg from it. Was in a cast all the way up to almost my hip for about 6 weeks, and then 2 weeks in a below knee cast, and wasn't able to finish the last weekend of the show, but I was constantly calling the box office. How's it going? How's the show tonight? How are ticket sales? Just checking in on everything because I so wanted to be there, but I couldn't because I was in the hospital.
Wade Lewis was a comic. He was always, he's a great guy. He did a lot of our special effects. He could, if you told me I had to blow up something, he loved it. He did for Wizard of Oz, they did the snow effect. And one day he dumped the whole thing on. There was several of us that walked up at the same time. He dumped the whole box of stuff on us. Said, it was a mistake. And I thought, oh yeah, right. He was just a character. I really missed Wade. He was a good guy.
Oh, I love Wade Lewis. He was just the greatest person to work with. He was our magician, and he was an expert one. So anytime we needed to have something happen on stage, he was the one that was really creative with it. And he was the one that when we had fireworks at the amphitheater would shoot them off the roof of the amphitheater. And it was so much fun to work with him. When we were doing Sugar, there was a mob scene from the Chicago Massacre or whatever. And he had to set it up. And so he had flash pots that were going off, and then he had one of the people, when the thing went off, we looked out and Doug Hyslop was laying on the floor, but he was smoking on his, there was actually smoke coming out of his chest. And Wade's backstage going, well, it's not aflame yet. He said, we got about 20 seconds more to go. He says, if it bursts into flame, we'll go out and stop it. But we cracked up about it. And Doug was fine. He wasn't hurt at all. It was just a little bit of smoke, but it was scary. And I don't know, Wade was just a real special person. Everybody liked Wade. He was real instrumental when we did, the one with the plant. Little Shop of Horrors. Thank you. He designed our little shop and made those effects happen too. So, fun man. Well, because Wade was the person that did all the special effects. When he died, his wife wanted to honor him in some way. And, she got with Jenny, my daughter, and had this award, with this picture made, and she wanted it for the person that had the best with us, or that did the best that year, bringing something special, like a special effects to the show.
Betty Stiegel used to paint awesome sets. When we did Music Man, I would sneak out into the audience in the back door and watch some of the scenes. The train that she developed and the guys in their motion looked just like they were on a train. They had fans behind it blowing, so it looked like things were going by, and the fans, it was awesome. Fiddler on the Roof, she did in the bar scene, To Life, when they sang that. Ron Fournier brought a friend backstage, and he asked him, where do you store those beams? And guys go, what beams? In the bar. He said, those are flats, they're painted. He couldn't believe that they were painted. That's how realistic Betty would make the sets.
Tell me about the ship.
Oh, yeah.
The ship that you drew on Mike Dickinson's stomach. What show was that for? Do you remember?
Guys, no. That Navy thing.
South Pacific one.
South Pacific?
South Pacific, yeah.
Yeah. So did you have to paint that on him every night?
No.
No?
No, I did it in self-pen, and he told me a year later it was still there.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Fading at least.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah.
Peter Pan was full of a lot of wonderful things that happened. Peter has to fly into the nursery, and the nursery big shuttered windows, shutters would open, and then he was supposed to fly in. Well, this particular night, it happened to be the second Friday of the run, and it always seemed like crazy things would happen on the second Friday. I don't know why, but anyway. The person that was in charge of opening the shutters forgot to do it. And so when Peter was supposed to fly into that window, the shutters were supposed to be open so that it would open the window, and she was supposed to fly right in and land so prettily and all this. Well, that time it didn't open, and so the audience saw Peter slide right down the window. And I didn't know what happened. We heard this crash, and my pit conductor down there, John Shear, very drolly said to me, "She looks like a bug on a windshield." And I knew right away what happened. And of course, Eddie came running up that time, and I said, she's okay, she's not hurt, we figured, you know, whatever. So she got, and the audience is dying, okay, because they saw it all. And Eva got right back up she still was in her harness, and she went up, trusted that window was going to be open, and she came in so prettily and landed, and I'm telling you, it stopped the show with the applause. It was fun. Yes, it would. And she was great.
The second Peter Pan, I had a 50% fly rate. I was in charge of flying Peter in and jumping off the ladder out in the back and pulling the harness.
And you had a lot harder job of it here because we didn't have the room here like we had at the high school to really get her to be able to swoop in nice. And yeah, it was a bit of a challenge here, I think. People was there too.
Well, the challenge. How about that crocodile costume?
Oh.
Yeah, that was a fun one because it was what?
2 weeks.
First you said you didn't want one, then and 2 weeks before, I'm like, you sure you don't want one? You know, maybe we can come up with something.
Ron Fournier's little grandson.
Yeah.
He was up here working around, and he noticed that there wasn't any crocodile in the rehearsal. He asked, Grandpa, how come there's no crocodile?
I seem to remember the producer had been on you 2 or 3 times before that. Why didn't you have a crocodile?
We had the sound, we had the clicking, all this, you know, just, I don't know. But anyway, go ahead.
So, yeah, so I'm trying to think, well, what am I going to make this thing out of, you know, to make it look like crocodile, and that foam was so expensive or whatever, and the bed, the eggshell beds, mattresses or whatever. I'm like, oh, that might work. Found some. She got a belly board. Dee got a belly board from the school. The school.
Because I didn't want the crocodile to walk.
And he wanted it on. And so we got this belly board. We made this costume, and Ron's niece actually.
Yep. Katie.
What's her name again? Katie. That's right. And so she was in that. And of course, it was so realistic looking by the time we got done, and the way the lights hit it. Everybody in the audience were like, I mean, it did just that, and that we had someone come back that was in the show and offer to buy it.
Yeah.
That was a fun one for me.
Yes.
I enjoyed that because I was able to use my creativity and
you know, wonderful thing too is, you know, you talk about creativity is something tangible like a costume. But this guy right here, he played Smee, you know, second in command to Hook. And our Hook, Ron was a little taller than, Pat was taller than Ron. And he didn't want to overpower Hook.
Right.
So he would present himself as Smee, almost like a little crab walk, like this. He was wonderful. And he brought that character to life like that. And you got every impression that he was young, smaller than Hook. And he was, you know, he was perfect. And yet he was taller. How was your back during that?
Now I need knee replacement.
Yes.
Now we know why.
Yes.
But definitely. So, was that one of your favorite roles?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of favorite roles over the
It was really an interesting process when we acquired Theater 57. And it took us about a year to actually officially acquire it. But, you know, after a while, we got it put together. But one of the things that I think was most interesting was the acquisition of our theater when we first got it. And I like that story because it involves my Larry. And he was the one that was on the board, and he was put in charge of property, trying to find some property. And he came home one day and he said, Dee, I think I found our theater. And I said, you have? And he said, yep. And he took me up here and he showed it to me. And I walked in, and I mean, the minute I walked in, I said, oh, that could be the box office. And oh, that could be the lobby. And we walked into the sanctuary, and I thought, oh, this would be perfect for showing. And it's almost like it's got a stage up there. And then we walked down into the basement, and we said, oh, this could be where we'd store costumes, and this would be where the office would be, and all that kind of stuff. And then other people started coming in, and he started bringing other people in, and they'd all walk in and they'd all say the same thing. So that was very informative. And, having them come in and, it showed us that, yes, we probably really could utilize this as a theater. But there was an old house over there. I think it would be where the pastor lived or something, and nobody knew what to do with the house. We were all sitting there, we were all wondering what to do with the house, and somebody thought, oh, we should just tear it down and put a parking lot there, and somebody else said, well, we could have cast parties there or special meetings there. Somebody said, well, I think you ought to hire a caretaker to work there. We just couldn't decide. There was a lot of indecision. So we didn't know what we were going to do. Well, then, as most of you probably know, or people, Larry developed a cancer, and it was a fast-growing one. And he knew he wasn't ever going to see the fulfillment of this project. So, afterwards, when he realized that things were, going to be a little, he wasn't going to make it. He, in his last few days, he called Mary Ann, who was then president of Cast and Crew, and he said, I'm sorry I left you with such a mess. He says, but if there's anything I can do to straighten it out on the other side, I'll do what I can do. So anyway, the day he died, which was in May, we still hadn't firmed up everything with actually acquiring it. We were in the process. And I was at where he was at the Messiah Church, where he was going to be buried from. And I was on my way home, and I heard fire trucks down the road, and I thought, oh, must be a fire someplace. And then Maggie was on her way over to my house, and she said, Dee, the house is burning down at or where the theater is. And I said, oh, and I said, I want to call Larry and tell him. And then I thought, no, wait, he probably knows before me. But anyway, and then the bottom line of what happened is I think the church got insurance money for the house, and we got the property a little bit lower. So I just always thought, that he helped out the best way he could by giving us a cheaper price.
So there was a lot of volunteers, and some people would give us say how much it was going to cost to do their job, but they never gave us a bill. They told us what our bill was going to be, but they never gave us one, or they would just give us for supplies. So, like Ken is a plumber. Ken Radford is a plumber, and he did all the plumbing that we had to have redone. And we moved the bathrooms from the front. The front lobby was just a walkway. When you walk in, it was too blocked off on both sides. We made that bigger, made new bathrooms on the other side of the doorway, added on to that, and then made an office and a concession area. But since then, we've redone it, and it looks very nice.
Show to Go is a part of Clio Cast and Crew, and it's a group of people, we're all volunteers, and we go out into the community, well, at the beginning anyway, we go out into the community and we perform for mostly senior apartments in the Flint area and Frankenmuth and Flushing and all around there. And we sing oldies but goodies and Broadway show tunes, and patriotic songs and a little bit of this and that. And we have a great time, and we get a donation from the places, and we give that donation right to Clio Cast and Crew for our theater. we take the rest of December off, and we start again in January, and rehearsing for the regular gigs at the senior apartments, and totally different music usually.
Jan Palmer, our director, is fantastic. She really is very encouraging and funny, and she and Dee Smith, they put in so many hours planning and directing the Christmas show, and it has really paid off because it was because of the Show to Go singers that the mortgage was able to be paid off as quickly as it was. It's a wonderful group, and hey, if you like to sing, come on out.
So I became just super involved in the theater. I was on the board. I was in Show to Go. I was in almost every show. I started directing shows. I actually directed Last of the Red Hot Lovers in 2012 with Cindy Hubbard. That was my first directing experience, and so we did that. And I was also on Play Readers at the time, and I had presented Seussical the Musical to the play reading board, which I was so excited. It was one of my favorite shows, and it just seemed like so much fun, and I wanted to do it, is mainly why I picked it. But, and everybody on the, play reading board read it, and they said, oh, we'll never get the kids for that. We'll never get the teens. We'll never get the talent to pull that off. And I wasn't gonna say no. This was a show that we were gonna do. And, and if it came down to it, I was going to direct it, and I was going to choreograph it, and I was going to teach the music. I had a pretty big head back then that I really thought that I could do that. And I convinced everybody on that play reading board that this needs to happen. We can't limit ourselves. We have to do something outside of what we've been doing. And so they approved it, the board approved it, and a year later, we were doing Seussical. Luckily, I didn't have to direct. We had somebody that came in and did it, and it was a phenomenal show. We got kids from all over mid-Michigan came to audition, and the talent that was there, and the families that were back in Clio Cast and Crew.
Seussical was from what I was told, basically like a rock musical from Dr. Seuss. Had a bunch of his stories all put together and turned into an excellent show. I was a work for the show, kind of like the comic relief and everything, always funny. Made a lot of friends, met a lot of new people. It's definitely a day I wish I could go back to.
I actually won the Gypsy Robe for that show. The Gypsy Robe being something that has been passed from each show, and each person that gets it has been, is picked because they go above and beyond for that show. They either, they work in any capacity or try their hardest or just make that show extra special. And those are our Gypsy Robe winners. And I got to win it for Seussical, and I could not have been more proud when I finally got the Gypsy Robe, what had seemed like forever, which was only like 4 years that I had been here. And I finally got the Gypsy Robe for Seussical, the musical. And I really think ever since then, we've had those young people here. We've had more family involvement, which from Seussical led right into Monsters in the Closet, Pippi Longstockings. Now Beauty and the Beast is coming up this 40th season. And so we have those people now. And I'm so excited that I gave it that push to do Seussical, do something that we weren't comfortable with at the time.
During his last few months, I was in rehearsals for the Vagina Monologues, and it was just shortly before opening of that show that we learned he was going into hospice. But so it was difficult to finish that show, but we did, and it was a show that I thought, oh, I can't possibly go out and try out for such a show as this. But once I read the script, I thought, yep, gonna do it. And it turned out to be a very, very good show. And I am glad that I auditioned for it and was given a role. Again, fortunately, given a role.
Vagina Monologues. I hadn't been on stage in years. I did it when my son was in one show, and that was a long time ago. But something about Vagina Monologues appealed to me, because it spoke about real life things that people don't like to speak about or talk about. It is one of those more risky shows that we have put on here at the theater, because most of the shows are all family oriented and stuff. But community theater is, to me, bring out everything. I mean, bring on the stage of current things that are going on, and educating people that it's not just happy. Well, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it's not just dancing and singing. It's real life things that still are happening today. And I think that's what Vagina Monologues was about. And so I took part of that, and oh goodness, I was nervous as you can be, because as a monologue, everybody's up there on their own, and they're there for 15 to 20 minutes, and they're just talking. That's it. So if you mess up, that was scary. But I did get to cry, and I really, really enjoyed it. I had a good time. People seemed to like it. Some, didn't, but I think that's something that we should look at in the future. We need to bring this type of thing to our group, and times are changing, and we should change with them.
The biggest thing with Vagina Monologues was I know I had a good experience doing it. Mm-hmm. And if it enriched my life, I wanted to bring that to the women at this group, because they deserved the challenge as much as I did, and I learned from it. I mean, half the cast had never been on a stage before. Mm-hmm. And to see the cast actually come together was really nice, because it's a monologue. James, you're exactly right. You had to hold the stage on your own, and so in between monologues, the ladies were actually assisting each other, the veterans with the rookies. Try this phrasing instead. I think you'll like how that feels. Or why don't you try this motion, or lean forward, pretend you're talking to me right now. Mm-hmm. If this was you, use these words. Mm-hmm. And it helped those people, and it also allowed some of them to discover something in themselves, or not be afraid to express some very sad things that happened to them that they weren't willing to talk about before.
I was involved with Vagina Monologues when Dawn Sabrin kind of had this bug that she wanted to direct it, and she was a little nervous, and I said, I'll help you out. It'll be great. I think it was a big step for our theater, doing something so controversial. So I thought it was a big step for us, and all the women involved were very enthusiastic, and we all did a wonderful job, and I think it turned out well, and it was really well accepted, better than we expected, I think. I think another big turning point for our theater was when we did August Osage County. That was another show that was kind of edgy, and people were against it and didn't want to have it. And in fact, at the beginning, I was one of those people, and I didn't think our community was ready for it. And then when it finally got around to production, I tried out and was cast, and it was a great show. And I think that was a great turning point for our theater too. The community really accepted that one well too. And I think that sometimes the theater has to be a little bit edgy, and all us theater people are always a little edgy.
When we did August, I remember we lost a couple audience members. Yeah. They didn't like the F word and what have you. But for the most part, I think we brought in new people who appreciated the fact that this wasn't a run-of-the-mill show that you can go to any theater.
Exactly. Yep.
So, you win a few, you lose a few, and if you lose a few attitudes in the process,
That's a good motto to live by, definitely.
But with Vagina Monologues, we packed the house.
Oh, so good.
That was just such an important show.
Yes.
That's definitely on my list of favorites that I've done.
Yes. I'm going to grab some hairspray.
So take it like. Okay, so it's amen, 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 amen.
Right?
Well, I thought you were guys were gonna take the selfie again, so.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna take my clothes off, so you can either stay or you can leave.
I know. If you go in the room, my white purse is on the ground. Have to wait. Bridget, do you want me to basket?
Oh, that's so cute.
Sky.
Area no means no.
Bridget.
Hello.
Hiya, 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 hiya.
First of all, thank you all for all your hard work this summer. Seriously, guys, we put together an absolutely wonderful show. Also, with the audience, we're going to get a lot of responses tonight, so you've got to kind of feel your way through that, okay? As people are laughing or applauding, listen for it, because you'll sense it. You're theater people. It's going to arch, and as it is coming down, that's when we start the line, or we start the music, or we start. Sue will sense that also, okay?
Bits of advice. Definitely, if you love theater, stay a part of it, no matter what anybody says. Because I know when I was in school, I got teased a lot for doing it here at Clio Cast and Crew. And never quitting it is definitely the best feeling of my life.
It helps people to do things, to come and see like the talent that their town has, or gets other people who can't do a lot of stuff to come out. Like elderly retired people will come and act, and younger kids that don't really have much to do, they can come and act. It's a community that can get people to do stuff and be different people. As I said before, they can be a different people and watch the talent that their community has.
Seeing the kids that have grown up who have gone on to do professional or semi-professional theater.
Oh, I used to say, or I still say, that putting on a show is like having a baby. You find out that you're going to be directing the show and you're all excited and, oh boy, this is going to be absolutely wonderful. And then you start out and you plan, like, you know, when you have a baby, you plan, oh, I'm going to do a nursery. So you plan the set and you plan all that stuff, and then you keep going, and then it gets a little bit harder, and then you get to the point where, oh my gosh, are all these, is it ever going to come together? Is this ever going to happen? And oh, I don't know if we'll get this done or we'll get that done or whatever. And then you start working and you have to go over and over and over, and you are in labor, and people start snapping at each other, and you know, they're not usually like that. And then it's opening night and time for the delivery, and after you have the delivery, you got the baby in your arms, and yeah, maybe it wasn't quite perfect, or maybe your baby has blonde hair and you would rather had black, but I said, you've got the joy of having it done and completed.
That's the part of a volunteer organization such as the Clio Cast and Crew, is that we always need new people, new volunteers. We don't get paid for what we do. The pay comes from hearing the applause, from the wonderful reviews we get. It's just, it's very rewarding. So come on out, join us.
I truly think that Clio Cast and Crew just means so much to every member that comes through here. I mean, we've seen people, blossom and, come out of their shell and be more confident in everything that they do. And we've seen families grow up and go through Clio Cast and Crew. And, my mother and I do a lot of stuff here, so I've grown closer with her. And even she's, become such a leader in Clio Cast and Crew. I met someone who I truly believe is the love of my life here. So it's definitely, it made me who I am. And I'll continue to do whatever it takes to make Clio Cast and Crew amazing.
One thing that I've always really appreciated, liked, benefited from, is that community theater, and I would shout this from the rooftops, draws such a wide variety of people. When I think back to those first 10, 15 years, and like I said, there's a wide variety of people. There are a lot of teachers, just the nature of who teachers are. But I know it brought me into contact with like shop workers, housewives, store clerks, older students, business owners. Just a wide variety of people that I would not probably have had as much contact with and gotten to know. And just amazing, amazing people. Talented, dedicated, fun. And I think we were all enriched by each other because it expanded our own individual little worlds.
What drew me to stick around was all the people here. They felt like family, someone I could really trust in and always be there for me.
Since my involvement years ago, when I look around the theater here, the success of Cast and Crew is just tremendous. I mean, when you look at all these posters of all these great shows, I mean, I was in a handful of shows compared to all the great shows that Cast and Crew has done over the years. So I'm very proud of them for what they've done for the community and of all the members and the traditions, the people, great people in this show, in this organization over the years. Some we've lost, some have passed on, and yet tremendous tradition in a small little town of Clio. Tremendous tradition of arts in the theater.